When we talk about the tech ecosystem, we speak a lot about startups and investors, but there are a range of other players that are part of the system supporting the growth of startups in a range of ways, from talent development to government policy, business processes, and generating revenue. Startups need a lot of support to become successful. Today, we'll talk to one of the companies that help accelerate our startups from zero to finish line.
Hello and welcome to Tech into the Future, where we talk about everything that's happening in tech and how it affects you. My name is Tomiwa Aladikomo. I'm the CEO of Tech Cabal, a digital publication that's been covering African technology for the last decade.
And I am Ngozi Maduka-Dozie. I look after Android Partnerships West Africa for Google. And I, alongside Tomiwa, will be your guide into the world of technology in Nigeria, Africa, and the world.
Today we're talking about incubators, accelerators, and hubs. They are companies that provide training for frequently very green entrepreneurs, helping them understand the journey and what it takes to build solid companies from start to finish. They also work to bring funding into the ecosystem through partnerships with development finance institutions and other non-governmental organizations, money that is frequently less return-driven than pure venture capital. They work with governments on policies, bringing their relationships with regulators to bear on these companies, helping them to find success in the tough markets that they operate in. There are a range of these programs, including programs like Google for Startups, MEST, Antler, Startup Bootcamp, Ingenie, Antler, and Seedstars, whose regional director we're speaking with today. Stay with us as we find out how accelerators, incubators, and hubs affect the startup ecosystem and how they affect you.
Welcome back to Tech into the Future and Arise News. This week we have Rolake Rosiji, the Regional Director for Africa at Seedstars. Welcome to the show, Rolake.
Great to be here, Ngozi.
To start with, could you tell our viewers what Seedstars is and how it supports African startups and entrepreneurs?
Seedstars is an organization that supports entrepreneurs and technology startups across the world. Africa is the largest part of our business, and we run accelerators, incubators, growth programs, and investment readiness programs across Africa. We also have VC companies in-house, and we also have an academy.
Fantastic. It's funny because you just really went into some of the words that I threw out earlier today. So, for the benefit of our viewers, again, can you just tell us what is that? What are accelerators? What are incubators? What's a hub?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really glad you asked that because there's a lot of jargon in there and people go around acting like they know, but they don't know. So it's good to talk about it.
Indeed.
An incubator program is for new businesses. So businesses that don't yet have their MVP and they're not yet making any revenue.
Any kind of business or tech-specific businesses or...
Yeah, great question. So generally in this VC world, it's tech businesses, and it's specifically high growth tech businesses that are able to scale at a really fast pace. However, for Seedstars, we don't only look at tech businesses. We actually call the businesses we look at small and growing businesses. So we're interested also in agriculture companies, health, companies in general led by women. So an incubator in the general sense of the word would be focused on tech businesses, but how we say it as Seedstars is that we're actually quite broad and we're more interested in a business that is able to have impact in terms of job creation and contributing to the local economy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's incubators. Then you're going to give us accelerators.
Yes. So accelerators are further down the journey for an entrepreneur. So when you're already making $10,000 in revenue, you already have an MVP, you have a few customers.
MVP.
Yes.
I know, we've gone to school today.
MVP.
Okay, so you've got your minimum viable product, which means that, when you have a business idea, first of all, you start testing your products, you start selling something, but you're not necessarily sure if it's what you're going to continue working on. So when we say you have a minimum viable product, it means you've gotten to a certain stage that you believe customers are willing to pay for this product. Perhaps you could also add an additional explanation, because I may be missing
I think it captures it. It captures it well. So it's the first product you take to market that is, it's not a prototype, but it's actually usable. The customer can actually use it. It does what it is that you say the product is supposed to do. Now, it might not have all the bells and whistles that your polished product is going to do, but if you say you're going to help me collect money from merchants, it can collect money from merchants. Exactly. It might need a nicer interface for down the line. It might need, bells and whistles and all these things that make it special, but the minimum viable product is just, it does what it's supposed to do.
Yes.
So is it safe to say that's when it's found its market fit?
Yes.
Okay,
fantastic.
Might be a bit, an MVP, market fit's a little bit later.
Further down?
A little bit further down. MVP is, we said we were going to make something that allows you to collect money. Great, we have something that allows you to collect money.
Okay.
Whether everybody loves it
Right. Whether
or not, that one is still to come. We'll find out. But at least we've
yeah.
created something that allows you to collect money.
Okay.
I think Tomiwa is spot on, actually, because after we do accelerator programs, we move on to what we call growth programs, which is when definitely you already now have your product market fit and you are collecting money. Your traction is such that you're making much more than, let's say, the $10,000 revenue that you would be making at the accelerator stage.
Yeah. So I think product market fit is, we talk about a lot in the tech industry, because it's that place where, okay, this product, the audience really values it. In fact, they are looking for you more than you have to push it. The pull from the market is more than just your own marketing dollars pushing it out there. And it's a hard thing to get to, because it's very easy to build something, but it's very, very hard to build something that people want. Really, really want.
And they're willing to
pay for.
Exactly.
Yes, that's always a tricky one. Yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we've got accelerators, we've got incubators, and we've defined a whole bunch of terms. I'm curious about sort of why Seedstars does what it does and why you do what you do. So Seedstars is a global network. You guys are in a number of regions. You just said Africa is sort of your biggest space. What drives your work? Is it purely commercial? Is it return driven? Or what's the impact focus? What are you trying to accomplish?
It's a bit of a mix for us at Seedstars. As you said, we're global, so we've got operations in Asia, Latin America, Middle East, and Africa as well.
Okay.
We are really focused on supporting businesses where there is going to be an impact in terms of job creation and supporting the overall ecosystem and local economy. Having said that, we also do have VC businesses as part of the Seedstars organization, and of course, they're focused on making a return. So it's a bit of a mix. In the program side of the business, we're focused on capacity building, helping the entrepreneurs upskill themselves so that their businesses grow. And then we understand that if a business grows, they're more likely to hire more people, they're more likely to contribute to their own economy.
So I have a question for you, because you use the word. We talk a lot about impact investing. How do you define impact?
Yeah. I think it varies depending on the organization.
Of course.
So for us as Seedstars, we're looking at SDGs. So where we're investing in companies that are covering the main sustainable development goals by the UN, we would define that as impact. So we are looking at companies who are playing in climate action, who are playing in the gender equality space, who are working on health issues, who are working on issues related to migration. Those are the main themes that we focus on.
Let me ask you a question about how that interacts with, how do you interact with governments, with startups, with other, what are the other elements of the ecosystem that you interact with in your work?
Yeah. So we interact a lot with the other elements in the ecosystem. We've got an investor network of about 5,000 other investors, and we like to co-invest. That's how our VC side of the business works. On the accelerator side, we are trying to develop a pipeline of new businesses that will then feed in to other investors. And these investors could be venture capital, they could be microfinance, they could be local banks, or any type of financing partner. So we work closely not only with what, I guess on this show, you talk about mostly the typical VC. We also work with local banks, local microfinance players, angel investors. We work very closely with a lot of angel investors. Yeah.
Interesting.
So then tell me, now we're bringing it home to Nigeria. What would you say would be the challenges you found in running an accelerator program in Nigeria?
Yeah. It's not easy. It's not easy.
Nigeria really is.
Exactly. A lot of our programs are Pan-African. And I think, let me start with the positive. Positive is that on average, the programs that we're running across Africa, so for example, we're doing one for the European Union and the German government, where there's 2,000 entrepreneurs, an outsized number of them come from Nigeria. We've just finished some sourcing work for IFC, and again, of the 100 entrepreneurs, an outsized number come from Nigeria. So we see that energy, we see that problem-solving ability. And I think the reason why we have so many problem solvers is because we have so many challenges and we have so many difficulties.
You may have hit on something there.
So, I mean, cost of living in Nigeria, we're all living here together. The currency devaluation that seems to be persistent right now.
Especially with the week we just had. No comment.
Yeah.
I mean, let's talk a little bit about the startups. What is... talk to us about a few startups that are doing work that's worth talking about within your network.
Okay.
What's a typical high-flying startup? For you.
Okay, so right now we're working with several brilliant startups. So I can't mention all, but we're working with one called Regster, which is a Nigerian-based fintech, which is offering financing for the underbanked. So if you think about the typical person who can definitely not get a bank account, so maybe someone who's hawking on the streets, maybe someone who's a refugee, they've actually just come to Nigeria from a neighboring country, they don't have their papers. You could also think about some sorts of artisans, not all, because we all know some artisans who are actually making a very, very good living. So Regster provides a mobile app platform that enables an underbanked person to receive microloans and to make transactions with very low fees. So they're one company that we're working with. And we're also working with Sparkle. Sparkle, again, is a fintech in Nigeria. So both Sparkle and Regster are parts of our financial innovation for women in migration program. So this is a program that we're running in partnership with the Swiss Development Agency and the Impact Linked Finance Fund. And it's focused on fintechs that are really thinking about migrants or refugees, and specifically women migrants that otherwise they will never be able to bank. They will come to a new country. So how do they start up? So we've identified 16 fintechs across Africa that are innovating at a really...
In that specific audience.
Yeah, they're innovating for a greater audience, but they see an opportunity as well for that specific audience.
When I speak with sort of executives at sort of the global tech companies who do recruiting within this environment, they do talk about the fact that, yes, you're right, we have strong entry-level talent. Sometimes on a technical level, they find that sort of the quality of our STEM education in Nigeria lets us down in terms of people sort of ranking up. And I know Nigerians do well when we emigrate and we go global, but we also are then in those environments and sort of leaning on their sort of learning skills and training programs and our natural hunger and problem-solving abilities, as you mentioned, then serve us well when we're in environments where the resources to grow are. But in interacting with Nigerian startups and in sort of running programs for them, how do we accelerate that growth here for talent, whether it's managerial skills, whether it's technical skills, so moving from entry level, moving to, are there programs that you're seeing really sort of have an effect on that, or what do you think needs to change? Where are the places? Yeah.
I think mentorship is really important.
Yes.
And mentorship both by your bosses, the people in the office working with you, taking the time to actually train you on the skills that they've had and they've been able to hone themselves over several years, and taking that time to sit down with you. A simple example, you go to restaurants around Lagos and somebody comes to serve you, they don't know what's on the menu, they don't know to say hello. But of course, the person who started that restaurant did it because they love hospitality, they love people. That person who started that restaurant could really just take the time to do that. At Seedstars, we have a formalized process of mentorship training, entrepreneurs in residence working not only with the founders, but also with the founders' management teams. And something that we think a lot about is that we're training you as the founder, we're training your management teams, but the management teams now have to train those beneath them. So I think, across startups in Nigeria, mentorship is something that can really help. That personal connection and taking the time to really teach somebody what you have learned the hard way. So you assist them not to have to go through the same problems that you did.
Fantastic.
It's funny you say that. When you said mentorship, I actually heard mental shift, which is actually very interesting.
Nosy with the puns.
No, that is what I heard.
Yeah.
I heard mental shift. So speaking about mental shifts, when we look at the ecosystem, right, what type of mental shifts do you think need to happen in the ecosystem to just make programs like Seedstars and organizations like yours and others more successful?
Yeah. I love that you heard mental shift. I think, and speaking of Nigeria again,
Yes, indeed.
we definitely, in general, have this can-do attitude. But I think something that can change mentally is that not only can you do whatever it is you envisage, but you can do it as a team. You can do it with the help of others. It's not me and me alone, and then it's crabs in a bucket. I have to push someone down. So I think this mental shift of that working in a team, cooperating with other startups, cooperating with other partners can actually lead to an overall greater good. We do a lot of peer learning in our program. So like I mentioned the fintechs earlier, these 16 fintechs that we've brought together from across Africa, they're sharing learnings. The ones in Nigeria are sharing learnings with the ones from Kenya. The ones from Ivory Coast are sharing learnings from the ones from Botswana. So they're actually working together. They have sessions on a weekly basis together. They're meeting mentors, but they actually become a bit of a team. And I think often as Nigerians, we tend to keep a lot of good ideas to ourselves. We want to hide it until a certain level. I don't think there's anything absolutely wrong with that, but actually you get a lot of value when you work with others and when you share the earlier stage. So I think that mental shift of, yes, I can do it, but I can probably do more with others on my side. What would you guys say to the mental shift? Because I'm so curious since you heard that word.
I think collaboration, like you've mentioned, I think definitely is super critical. Learning from other people. We're super competitive. Sometimes it's counterproductive. I think that can-do spirit needs to be paired with a commitment to mastering the details and to technical expertise and discipline. So a little bit, there's the artisan, I can't do it. You want me to make that? I can't do it. And then it's just not paired with like the actual rigor and technical discipline to become a master. And I think that's, attention to detail. You know what so one of the things I say is that I think because we're so used to problem solving, we're so used to hustling, we end up sort of mastering in hustling and not in excellence. Yeah. And so there's a big mental shift in kind of recognizing that we can't build world-class businesses, we can't build a world-class economy if we don't master the details of these things, if we don't sort of commit ourselves to the technical. And I think when you talk about sort of mentoring young people, it is one of the things that I'm constantly pounding into, whether it's my team or any young people I speak with. It's great to have the spirit of like, let's go. But it is also important to realize that to get to any sort of real level and to get to deliver anything that actually matters, you do have to sort of like put in the grind that isn't just doing the work, but it's it's becoming a master of this craft. It's chasing excellence in this thing. It's understanding it in a deeper way than just, like, let's do it. So raw enthusiasm is great, but technical mastery sort of demands a lot more and is essential for us to build things that actually matter in the long term. So I think that's an important shift.
So
that we need to see.
I'll plus one on that. But I'll also then add, because when you said something about us being good at the entry level, but not necessarily being able to transition to managerial, levels, it got me thinking about how we learn in Nigeria. And I don't know that this has changed, but I went to school here, primary school and secondary school. And there was a time when you had to just learn things, you just had to know things. 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 4 is 16, and on and on and on. Yeah. But you never really got to ask why. And I think that is the creative thinking, is the thinking outside the box. And so if I'm not told to do this thing, then I just don't do it. And I haven't really thought about, even if I'm told to do this thing, what are other ways, more efficient ways of doing this thing, more effective ways of doing this thing. So I feel like that mental shift in, I don't want to say challenging the status quo, but challenging the status quo, right? Yeah. Just because it's the way we've always done it doesn't mean that this is the way it should always be done. And those are the types of people that move, from entry level to manager, right? Because they're finding efficiencies and they're doing things better. So we then had the mental shift conversation.
Wait, so broadening beyond mental shifts and talent, what else needs to change? I mean, so today's show is about accelerating the ecosystem. And so what are the sort of infrastructural things or what policy things do you think need to change to really sort of like move the tech scene to being a more significant contributor to the economy and to the benefit of people's lives? Are there any other big areas that you think need to change or evolve?
I think, one area would be further liberalization of financial laws. And I think we've come a long way. The fact that the ease, I use the word ease carefully, of getting a micro finance license and more and more entrepreneurs are able to do this. But I think we could possibly go a step further. I think when we think about newer, more innovative areas of fintech, in crypto or blockchain, I think we need to be ahead of the game. So we should not be waiting to see other countries putting in place laws that are supporting these sectors. I feel because Nigeria is getting an outsized proportion of VC investment in Nigeria, the vast majority of that is going into fintech, although in the last couple of years we've seen renewable energy really increase. We should be the ones pioneering these laws here. I think liberalization of financial laws to enable more innovative entrepreneurs to get into the space. And then also to take another step back to what I was speaking about earlier, that at Seedstars, we're not only looking at the most tech business. It's not only tech businesses.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that. It's like, it's not just that you're talking about tech business, you're talking about fintech specifically.
I know. That just came to my mind.
So beyond fintech, what else?
Beyond fintech, we are at Seedstars again very interested in climate-related businesses and agriculture businesses as well. So I think in those areas, what would help the ecosystem really develop is a lot of these sectors depend on imports, and we had some progress in the renewable energy space in Nigeria a few years ago, where there was a reduction of import duties on bringing in solar panels. But then, along the way, it actually went back up again after it was only reduced for a very short amount of time. And this really hampers the ability of local companies, especially with our currency devaluation. So I think really looking into different industries and trying to understand what their costs are and trying to understand where the costs of the Nigerian businesses vary to their competitors. So where can Nigerian businesses be more competitive on a global scale and even begin to export ourselves? If it is, let's say, a solar business, we can only do that if we're able to bring in that component that we need from China at a reasonable cost. So where can the government come in and assist with things like import duties? Yeah.
Fantastic. It's been wonderful having you with us, Rolake. Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to having you again. We are going to go to a break right now. Stay with us on Tech into the Future.
Welcome back to Tech into the Future. We just had an amazing interview with Rolake Rosiji. If you missed it, rewind, you will thank me later. However, there were some amazing things that she mentioned, talking about Seedstars and talking about the accelerator programs in Nigeria.
So I think accelerators play a really interesting role in a growing tech ecosystem. So you have the startups trying to do sort of the best work that they can and building solutions to people's problems. You have investors looking for their opportunities. And then you have sort of impact-driven players like Seedstars, I think, which has a VC arm, that's just pure investment, but has program arms where they're trying to improve a range of different things. So whether it's improving talent, whether it's working with government on policy, it's an interesting sort of fill in the gap role that they play to improve the quality of the ecosystem. And so I think that until you have a very mature ecosystem, you need a lot of these kind of interventions.
Yeah.
And I guess the hope is that they actually help to improve the quality of the companies within the ecosystem as they do their work.
It's interesting because I'd imagine that they have a lot more heavy lifting than, or at least I assume they have a lot more heavy lifting to do than the accelerators that are in other parts of the world that have,
So they're doing earlier level work.
Yes, yeah. They're going to have, because, when you now have to start, training for digital talent, digital skills as well, because imagine somebody has a fantastic idea, right? It's a tech idea. You now want to help them move that idea from just a concept to a viable product and then, put it in the market. And for that to happen, they need to find money, they need to find talent, etc. So not only are you helping them, you're now also helping every other area that they need, right? You're helping them find loans, or helping the banking system, right?
Yeah.
To make sure that there are policies in place for these types of businesses. You're upskilling people to make sure that the accelerators have, or that the companies have people to hire, right? So for other countries that may not have the same challenges, I would imagine that the accelerators would have maybe a different set of problems to be working on. So there's a lot of heavy lifting.
So here you're doing like a lot more fundamental work
Exactly.
in terms of solving.
Exactly.
I think actually that brings me to a point she made kind of at the end of the conversation around the growth of the ecosystem generally and what kind of things need to happen. And I think Nigeria is interesting because there's so much base level groundwork that has to be done. And I thought it was interesting to hear her talk a little bit about at a policy level, how easy is it to get licenses? How easy is it how easy is it to actually just participate in the economy,
right?
Essentially. I tend to look at the Nigerian economy and I think from a policy perspective, from a regulator perspective, there's a lot of work that is, she talked about looking at what is the rate for a startup to borrow in Nigeria, comparing it to a different market and trying to lower that rate. I think there's a lot of fundamental work for our regulators and for our government players to look at other markets and say, what are the fundamentals that make it easier to do business in that space than it is to do business here in Nigeria?
Thank you so much for joining us on Tech into the Future today. Join us next time as we take you into the business and impact of technology in Africa, how it's changing your world and how it's changing our world. Stay tuned for Arise News.